Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started. Tanshikiawao, Kris Dishnakashon, Winnipeg, Ostchinia. I'm Kris. I'm from here in Winnipeg. So I'd like to welcome all of our visitors who are not from Winnipeg here to Treaty 1 territory and the homeland of the Métis Nation, of which I'm a member. I'm the senior administrator for the CBC's new Indigenous Pathways to Journalism program, which piloted last year and is being renewed in 2023-24. And I'm joined by the incredible Mervin, Senior Managing Director of CBC North and a member of the Indigenous Pathways Steering Committee. The amazing Louise BigEagle, storyteller for Indigenous reporting based in Regina, Saskatchewan, and a member of the Indigenous Pathways cohort last year. And the remarkably fabulous Janell Henry, who's a reporter for CBC's Indigenous unit and also a member of last year's cohort. We're going to talk a little bit about the origins of this program, why and how it was created, lessons we learned from the first year of the program, and we're also going to hear from Louise and Janell about their experiences through Indigenous Pathways and with working for CBC. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it off to Mervin for some opening comments.
Good afternoon. Like she said, I'm Mervin. I'm from the Treaty 4 territory, the member of the Cree First Nation. My father is a Soto speaker, Anishinaabe, and my mother is NAJA. She speaks Cree. Both attended the Indian residential schools. And as a result of that, when my parents started having a family, they didn't speak the language at home, or when they did speak it, they didn't speak it to teach us. They, spoke the language just to communicate. As a result of that, myself and my brother and my sisters, so we didn't learn the language. And the reason I preface this with my comments here is it's part of what inspires me and drives me to do the work that I'm doing today as the Senior Managing Director at CBC North. For our visitors south of the border, CBC North is in the Yukon, it's in the Northwest Territories, it's in Nunavut, and it's in northern Quebec. We have 3 large stations and 4 bureaus across the north. We have probably about 50% of our employees are Indigenous. Many of them are language speakers. We offer Indigenous languages in radio and in television. One of my managers is here, Karen Velavant. She's the manager for Yukon and Whitehorse. She's a member of the Kwanlin Dun First Nation. And when I was hired for my job, they asked me what I wanted to do and what my vision is. And I said, I want to support the growth of Indigenous languages through our programming, content, and our hiring. And that's why we're here in full force at the conference. I brought, a member from each of our teams in the north here to experience the conference. And we're going to assess and evaluate and determine if we're going to be, attending future conferences here. But from the looks of it and the sounds of it, after only a few minutes, I think we're going to be back again for other conferences, and be active participants. Anyways, I already have 2.5 minutes gone. I said I'd only speak for 7, but I got to put a clock on myself, otherwise I'll get carried away, and the real stars of the program won't get a chance to share, and that's the cohort here. Anyways, the Indigenous Pathways was a result of another gentleman who I have to give him a lot of credit. His name is John Bertrand. He retired last year. John was a senior managing director for CBC Manitoba and CBC Saskatchewan. He came to me and he said, Mervin, I want to start a program that'll attract Indigenous journalists. It'll be an entry-level program, and the goal is to find them jobs at the end of it. Do you want to be a part of it? I said, absolutely, John, let's work together. So John and I started organizing meetings in a committee, and we secured some funding, and we started working together. And what we wanted to do was create a program that has enough resources to be successful, that has opportunities for the members to meet other Indigenous staff and get those supports. Because that's what we realized is that successful CBC Indigenous employees are the ones who have those supports from the beginning of their career and who can network and can learn from other Indigenous employees. And that's what we're doing. So last year, we sent out invitations for people to apply, and we received 6 people applied and were brought into the program. And this year we just completed the second year of hiring, and we have 8, Michael? 7 that are be coming in this year. So that's where we're at with that. Now, for myself, I grew up not knowing that Indigenous people were involved in the media because I never saw them. It wasn't until I left the reserve and watched CBC and I saw a lady named Joan Beatty, who was Cree from northern Saskatchewan working at CBC, and I'm like, wow, this is new. I didn't realize though that across the country there were other Indigenous journalists. Then I met a lady who's in this room here right now named Shannon Avison, who is the leader of the journalism program at the First Nations University, and she took me under her wing and brought me into her program, and off I went. And I wouldn't be here today without support from a lot of people. I didn't get here by myself, and that's the philosophy behind this program is that we're supporting the cohort and we're supporting each other as they grow and develop. One of the challenges that we have is finding Indigenous journalists. They're out there, but they're in such high demand in this country that we have to compete with government, we have to compete with tribal councils, First Nations. Private industry now is starting to scoop them up, in communications roles and other opportunities, or even politics. A lot of our people that have graduated from journalism programs or went on and had a career ended up in those places. So it's really challenging. But with Pathways, what we're trying to do is support and let them have some good work experiences. Anyway, I think I did my job here, but I just want to pass the mic over now and let Louise and Janell share their experience, and that's what you all came here to hear, is how they got here and what they've managed to do and what their goals are in the future. So miigwech.
Thanks so much, Mervin. So I'm just going to have a little slideshow here before we throw things over to Louise and Janell, just to give a bit more kind of information about how the program came together and what we learned in the first year. So some of you might not be that familiar with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, or CBC as it's known. It's Canada's national public broadcaster. So it does receive some government funding and is mandated through legislation known as the Broadcasting Act to fulfill a couple of activities: inform, enlighten, and entertain, contribute to the development of a shared national consciousness and identity, to reflect the regional and the cultural diversity of the country from coast to coast to coast, and to contribute to the development of talent and culture in Canada. And those last 2 points are really important in terms of the work that Indigenous Pathways is doing. And of course, you can find out more at the website, cbc.ca. So as Mervin touched on, Indigenous Pathways is a new 9-month full-time paid learning and development opportunity for First Nations, Inuit and Métis storytellers who are looking to work in a CBC newsroom and develop their careers in media. So the program was piloted in 2022 to 2023, and it's been renewed, and we've just, as Mervin mentioned, finished the selection process for that. The new cohort will be starting in September. It's structured as a 13-plus week temporary job contract that comes with journalism training, career development support, cultural relevance for participants, as well as multi-platform storytelling opportunities. No journalism education or experience is needed to apply, although some of the participants do bring different media experiences into the program with them. And the program is also a response to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action number 84.2, which called on the CBC to increase equitable access for Indigenous people to jobs, leadership positions, and professional development opportunities. The CBC has an equity, diversity, and inclusion plan that sets some targets for representation of Indigenous staff within the organization, but in the first couple of years of that plan, from 2019 to 2021, representation of Indigenous staff in the workforce fell below the level of workforce availability demographics across the country. So there is a need for the organization both to fulfill that plan and to fulfill this call to action to find new and innovative ways of recruiting, retaining, developing, and supporting Indigenous talent. The goals identified for this new program were to build new creative and flexible pathways into the CBC for Indigenous journalists and storytellers, to ensure that those candidates are developed and supported in ways that promote their long-term success. So we all have seen internships or temporary jobs or short contracts that really have no pathway to anywhere. So we wanted to help ensure that this meets the goals of the TRC call to action, the goals of the CBC's EDI plans, by leveraging the time we have with the folks to help support them to be able to work longer term at CBC and to want to follow those opportunities as well. And also to create safer environments with cross-cultural sharing and knowledge and cultural supports kind of built into the program. And excuse me, some of that happened on a peer level within the cohort as candidates were spread out all over the country. And some of it happened with different cultural events that we participated in with elders or going to art galleries or bringing in guest speakers and such. The program also decided it would have some specific values informing the work of the program. Again, that purposeful path building, looking for retention opportunities, and really excited to say that we surpassed this 75% goal with the candidates continuing to work after completion of the program, and 2 of them have secured new permanent positions, which we'll hear about soon. A sense of belonging, so making an effort to create a culturally aware, inclusive environment that is Indigenous, led and relevant. Having support to succeed, including training, feedback, development opportunities, and mentorship. And also having a program that supports building new community partnerships, relationships, and connections with other Indigenous communities that have shared goals and values. This is just a timeline of the program from last year. We had a 6-week application window, did all the interviewing and selection process in the month of August, then had a few weeks to send out invitations and offer letters, and we started the program September 26th. A few weeks in, we brought the cohort, which was spread out across the country. We had a candidate in St. John's, Newfoundland, and one in Vancouver, BC. We brought everyone to Winnipeg for a week of journalism skills training and team building. And then the rest of the fall, the candidates moved into some more hands-on skills development with multi-platform media rotations and thinking about the development planning and leveraging their skills and talents into roles that they might want to pursue. And the final phase of the program was essentially like a work placement within CBC where they're contributing full-time members of the newsroom. Some were working in current affairs radio, some were doing multi-platform reporting, some were working in TV. They're kind of in various roles. And so some people are still kind of on extended contracts in the roles that they did during their work placement, and others have moved into new positions. So the first few weeks of this program, we focused really heavily on having a robust onboarding program that, wasn't just skills boot camp, as some people called it, but was really focused on building a sense of belonging, teamwork, identifying shared values and strengths, as well as skills development. And some of the feedback we heard on those initial weeks was that it helped everyone get on the same page with shared values and goals, helped the candidates feel connected, welcome, and have a window into different kinds of work that they might pursue at CBC. That it was really helpful for the cohort in those initial weeks to spend so much time together. There was like 3 hours of virtual time together each day with guest speakers coming in and check-ins and discussions on different topics. And that was valued because it helped really solidify the sense of teamwork across the cohort. And that having that constant contact with the group helped participants build confidence. Having other Indigenous journalists that they were connected to through guest speaking opportunities was also helpful. That people really felt supported by the fact that the whole cohort in the program was other Indigenous folks from across the land. Just a few photos from our in-person gathering in Winnipeg. We went to the Winnipeg Art Gallery and the Inuit Art Center, Kamiork. We had little gift bags with a copy of Duncan McHugh's book and some medicines. We did a tour of the newsroom, and people had the opportunity just to explore the city a little bit as well, because only a couple of us were from here. Over the course of the final 6 months of the program, the rotations and work placement phase, the participants in this program collectively produced and co-produced over 150 different stories across platforms. All of these photos were taken by participants in the program as well, and it was just kind of a remarkable outpouring of creativity. A lot of Indigenous stories being covered by these journalists, but definitely by no means exclusively Indigenous content. People were always also covering local politics, healthcare, breakthroughs in science, food, entertainment, dating apps. There was all kinds of different story topics that folks got to explore and create work about. And again, building connections, right, in the communities with folks who maybe had stories to tell that otherwise might not have been covered. We were fortunate towards the end of the program in March to be able to take another collective gathering in Halifax on Mi'kmaq territory, and that trip involved some hands-on mobile journalism training, so a bit more concentrated in hands-on technical skills for digital video production, and some editing. The group actually did produce a video coming out of that week, and we also, again, met with local elders and had some cultural experiences in the city as well. At the end of the program in June, a lot of feedback from participants and staff that was highly positive, from participants saying, it's been wonderful, fun, I've loved it. Given the outcomes for everyone, it sounds like we all have something going after. I hope that's also a feature of the program moving forward, and that everyone who comes through Indigenous Pathways and wants to stay with CBC can. This is my dream job. And then from someone on a staff support team at a host station, for someone without a traditional background in journalism to receive time and support to develop and then seamlessly transition into a role in the newsroom is a dream. Also, it's not just a learning opportunity for the candidate, it's a learning experience for all of us in the newsroom to work with someone who we might not normally encounter here. And from a participant, again, that the biggest strengths are that it's Indigenous focused and culturally sensitive. So some of the things we learned from this initial year, it works. You can bring people in from non-traditional backgrounds and support and develop them in a period of 9 months to transition into longer-term work at a broadcast organization. Some other things we learned was, the value of engaging local Indigenous communities where these opportunities are opening up directly to recruit. So definitely locations where those relationships and partnerships and that kind of outreach and relationship building happened definitely drew in more applicants, and we saw that happen this year as well. Being clear about the selection criteria on the application form was another lesson. We had a very broad application last year to keep it low barrier, but it was just like, why are you interested, and share your resume. And then when we got to see this like vast pool of 100 applicants, aged 18 to 80, and like all of these different walks of life and backgrounds. Of course, it was like, how do you make an informed decision, when you haven't actually kind of zeroed in on what skills will be, help this person succeed and also make a meaningful contribution to the local newsroom. Lowering financial barriers to participation. It's a full-time paid job, but the reality is that people are working in other jobs that they may need time to transition out of. They may be also, just going check to check, and if we don't support them at the outset, it can be really difficult to move into an opportunity like this and make a big change in your life. So supporting folks at the outset with some financial support or incentive is really important to ensuring that they're able to succeed and thrive in the program. Most of the participants expressed some financial hardship transitioning this program was something we learned. Also providing standard equipment to all participants. We kind of let the host stations manage, what equipment people got in terms of a workstation and mobile equipment like a laptop and phone, but with the cohort spending also a significant amount of time virtually together, and there being a lot of kind of self-directed work and online learning happening, it really would make more sense, and we're going to try and do that this year, to just give everyone a laptop and a phone at the start date and try to make that standard across the board. Also make it hybrid. We were unsure at the public broadcaster. Obviously, there was a lot of remote working happening during the pandemic as we kind of restrictions were lifting. Unsure of what the future of hybrid work would look like at CBC, but the broadcaster has sort of made a long-term commitment to having hybrid working options for staff, and for some folks, it's a struggle to get in and out of the station every day if it's not close to where they're living. Having some structured days that, yes, you're going to be here in the station, and other days where there's flexibility to work remotely was also identified as something that can help candidates succeed and also help with retention. And then building in more peer and mentorship supports. Marvin used the term wraparound. Like, another key fact of this program was that people were supported not just by a boss, right, but they had each other as peers. They were connected to our Indigenous Employee Resource Group, which is like 80 other Indigenous staff across the broadcaster. They had me as a central kind of coordinating and support person. And they met with all kinds of other speakers and trainers throughout the initial months of the program to build connections and to make contacts with people they could reach out to for things. But, I guess the feedback we got was like, more of that, please. It is really about success in an organization like CBC is really about having relationships and knowing who to talk to about what, and packing that in more formally is something we learned. And finally, when we asked people what could be improved about this program from its, experimental pilot year, at least half of the respondents said, spend more money on it, double the amount of placements, make it bigger. We'd love to recruit more candidates at our station locally. So it has the opportunity, definitely both in terms of support from the staff at the stations at CBC, as well as interest to grow. In addition to the program, we launched an Indigenous Pathways newsletter in October. And it's a monthly digest of Indigenous-oriented learning and development opportunities, jobs at CBC, as well as updates and profiles on Indigenous staff and content at CBC. The newsletter really took off. It was initially framed as an idea, a way for us to keep in touch with applicants who didn't make it into the program, so that they'd stay in the loop about other opportunities where they could hone their media skills or apply for work. But now we have it's 7,000 subscribers in 9 months. Now we're at 12 months, and I think we have over 10,000 subscribers. So CBC's Indigenous Pathways newsletter, you can look it up and subscribe if you're interested in any of those opportunities. And of course, the program, there's Mervin and myself, but Robert Doan is also here from the steering committee, and Michael Dick is on this year's steering committee. We mentioned John Bertrand. There's a whole team of, a dozen folks who support the development and the structure and decision-making around this program. It wouldn't be possible without a little village. So that's an overview of the structure of the program and what we learned. And now I'm going to turn it over to Louise and Janell to share a bit about their experiences.
Hi, everyone. I guess I'll start. My name's Janell Henry. I'm the new journalist for the Indigenous unit based in Manitoba, and I was really lucky to get hired on after the program. I was kind of freaking out there when it was coming to the end. I'm like, what am I gonna do? So, but yeah, I was like really lucky. I started the week after, and then we had a team meeting in Toronto, and that was really crazy. So, like, it's gonna be a year for us now in September that we've been working with CBC, and I've just like experienced so much in this last year. Like, we went to Halifax as a team. Well, now I went to Toronto, not with you though, but with the other team. And I've just been learning so much. Like, how I got into media was, well, as a little girl, my dad was a musician, and I always seen him, like, his passion and stuff when he would go play, and he just loved music, and I loved going, and he'd do his own PA, and then him and my uncle, they started a res radio, and they put it in my uncle's basement, and I was just kind of there following him around all the time. And then I'm a teenager, and they let me have my own show, and I liked, like, metal music and rock music, so I had like my own like metal music hour Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that was really fun. And my cousins would come with me, and like, we're on the res, and one thing that always stuck with me is that when they went to go register this new radio station, the guy kind of like laughed at them, and it was so low broadcast that like they weren't seen by the CRTC. And they were just kind of like, oh, so you're just kind of like a renegade radio station. So we were kind of able to do like whatever we wanted, but except for swear. They wouldn't let us swear. My dad anyway. But so they ended up calling it CKOP Renegade Radio, and it's since gone down. But because of that, I have had the dream of starting like a bigger, better studio, like in an actual building on my reserve. Because like, even for me as a teenager, just being interested in music and art, and just even like learning what music and art is, that really helped me like just see what I'm into. So by getting into that, I decided to take an audio and media program, and I was just like, from then on, I was dead set on starting a studio in my home reserve. And I kind of want to do one like in Mohawk territory. They have that really nice one, Jacusa. So I would like to do something like that. But since I've started my education journey, so a little bit background on myself, I guess personally, is I grew up like half in Winnipeg and half on the reserve. So when I was younger, I lived here in Winnipeg in this little community called Jigtown. And it's this little Manitoba housing, like if you know, you know. And so then we moved from there to the reserve, and I'm from Roseau River Anishinaabe First Nation, and so there's there's the main res, and then there's the extension. So I lived on the extension when I moved out there, and then I went to a Métis town where I was the only Indigenous student there. And like, I felt all these like really weird differences of being in like Jigtown, where everyone's just kind of, you know, running around, and you just go run around with your friends all night. And then going out to the res where you're just like in the bush. And then going to this Métis school where I didn't have any of my cousins or anything. And I kind of felt like a little bit othered, because like people still weren't on that like Métis kick just yet. So it's still like, it felt like big differences. And so it took me a really long time to like, I guess find my spot there. But I always had family back here in Winnipeg, so we were always coming back and forth. So I was always noticing all those differences between all these communities. And so like growing up with my dad, going to gigs all over Canada, and then doing the radio, I just always had that dream of opening my own studio so that, you know, I could record people like my dad and help him with his project. And like anyone on the reserve, like there's so much talent down there, And like if we could just have our own studio and do our own productions, that's just been my dream. So I came to Winnipeg and I studied audio and media. It was a 6-month course. And obviously like you can't just like get a job after a 6-month course. So I was like, okay, well, I'm probably gonna have to write proposals if I wanna do a studio of some sort. So I went to university and I studied writing. And then I thought like, you know, when you gotta promote bands and stuff, you gotta like write up some stuff. And I tried that a little bit with the radio Facebook, and that was hard. So I was like, yeah, I gotta study some writing. And then when I went to university, I started Indigenous music show on the community radio. And that was so much fun, just bringing people in and talking to them. And that was a lot of fun too. And that's where I realized, yeah, I really got to like get better at writing. So I went through that. And then also through post-secondary, I started working at galleries. So there's like a lot of like under 30 positions. So I worked at like the University Gallery, and then I worked at the Winnipeg Art Gallery. And then I worked at Urban Shaman Gallery, so I started working more in like a lot of visual arts and taking on like projects and contracts there. And so I just like thought like, this is all gonna go towards my career of opening up this studio in the end, where I can support other artists and stuff from my own home community. And through doing like all that kind of stuff, also I was having some kids. So I had my first kid when I was 18, and so he's 13 now. And then I have a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So like after all of that time, I realized like maybe it's not just like music or art that I just like really love, but it's actually like people that I like really love. Like now I see my kids growing up, and I just like realize like when my mom used to be like, I'm so proud of you, I'm like, I get it now. So like now that I'm here and I go through this program, I'm learning how to write and stuff. I just love that like being able to learn about people's journey and to like see where they came from, to see what they did, to see where they're going. And so like when I went to NAG, I was just like so proud of all those kids. Like I wanted to cry like so many times, and just, yeah, I just identified with all the parents there. And so now when I do stories, I just like, I want to do everyone's story, because I feel like everyone deserves that recognition. And so going through the program, it was really interesting, like going from the res radio to just like being renegade to all of a sudden like CBC's like 8 million, and like all these people are reading. I'm getting emails, like some bad, some good. And it's just like, it's amazing to see. Like the bad ones are kind of like, obviously they're not very supportive, but it's interesting that I could put my perspective out there, and I'm challenging what they see, but I know that I'm like talking from my people's perspective too, so like I'm not the only one thinking this. It was like that merman, I did a merman story, and people were mad about that, and I'm like, I don't know why you're mad about this. And then some people were mad about the Barbie story that I did, but that doesn't bother me. So it's been really good going through the program, having the supports of like all these other people that have been doing it for a long time, because, you know, like I never really even like growing up, you know, you're just kind of bopping around, and like I didn't even know there was that many nations out there. So like I'm Ojibwe, my family's really proud Ojibwe people. So I always knew like we were proud Ojibways, but then I was like, I heard of Crees, but then I didn't hear of like Nakoda. I knew there's Dakota, but then just like to be connected through like all nations and to learn more about everybody's nation, it's just been like really amazing. And so I'm just like learning every single day, and I'm like excited to learn. Every challenge they send my way, I'll try my best, and I know that they're gonna be there to help me. So that's what I've loved the most about it. And like somebody said that going through our program is that like, it's the people at CBC that keep you there. And like, yeah, you get some hate mail sometimes, but it really is the people. And that's what I've probably learned the most.
Hi, everyone. bring that a little closer. My name is Louise BigEagle, and I am from Ocean Man First Nation in Saskatchewan. And I am a Nakoda on my grandfather's side and a Cree on my grandmother's side. And ever since I was little, I was a storyteller, and I didn't realize until I got older. I would get my little cousins together, and I would create plays and make them act them out, and after get my aunties, my grandma, and my mom to sit there and watch as we did this play. And then as I got older, in high school and in English, I would write stories, just randomly write stories and save them and not show anybody. And I did show, I think it was a grade 10 teacher, Mrs. Parisian, and she told me that. She's like, Louise, you're a storyteller. And I was like, oh, yeah, in high school, you're a teenager, you're thinking, you don't think of those kind of things. So anyways, as I got older, I got into university, and I knew that I wanted to go into, well, originally I was in psychology. And then after I auditioned for this student film, I didn't know that the University of Regina had a film program, and I was like, what, they have a film program here? So then I went into the film program instead. And one good thing about Indigenous community, especially in urban settings, is the support that you get from other people. And lucky for me, I was mentored by two great Indigenous female filmmakers, Janine Windolf and the late Trudy Stewart. They took me under their wing and mentored me. I was there for their company, their media company. I was there, they started me out as a social media manager, which is, boring, whatever, but I was there in the film world. I was beside them. And then one day they said, do you want to make your own film? We have a budget of $3,000. Go and make your own film. What do you want to do? So then I came up with this I Am a Boy documentary, which was 12 minutes, a little too long, but it's a learning situation. It was about a boy named Thomas Moore who went into residential schools, and he ended up dying at the age of 12. And he was, if you Google him, he's like the face of residential school, but I wanted to put a name to him and where he was from and his family and let people know who he was. And then from there, I did work with the National Film Board of Canada on a language documentary in my language to wake up to Nakoda language. I just wanted to share the importance of languages. So from there, I just kind of it started building more and more in my storytelling and who I was and what I kind of wanted to do. And I knew I wasn't, as I was back then trying out to be an actress in a student film, I knew I wasn't meant to be in front of the camera, I was behind the camera. So along that path that came Leighton Burton from the university, he's a professor, journalism professor at the University of Regina, always encouraged me, you should come to journalism school, you should come take some courses. And I was like, no, I like doing documentary work, I like storytelling. But I think what kind of pushed that was when I did some work for the Wanuskewin Heritage, I did 2 to 3 minute short docs on languages. They were reviving their cultural center and renovating it, so I was hired to do the short docs for that. And I kind of I kind of like doing short form films rather than long form films because they're quick, you can put them out there. So I seen the opportunity to, and I think Leighton Burton actually might have sent me the opportunity for the Pathways program. He's like, you should check this out. If not, you should pass it along to someone. And then I think a little last minute, I think I might have said, you know what, I'm going to apply. I'm just going to see what this is all about. And what important to me with this program when I first seeing it was that it was a paid program. Because I know I've wanted to try programs before, and they weren't paid. And it's the reality is you need to pay rent, you need to pay bills and other things like that. If you have children, you have childcare to pay for. So that was kind of like one of the hits for me to apply was that, and that's a 9-month program, so it's long term. It's not just, it's a 1-week program. You're not going to learn much in 1 week. So I applied, and it was funny. I was in Winnipeg when I had my interview, so I had to do my interview, I think it was on my phone in my car. So I was like, I'm probably not going to get it. It's kind of unprofessional. I'm in my car doing an interview. But whatever, I just did the best that I could, and then I got it, and I was pretty excited, and I did have enough time to give my employment notice that I was starting this program, and I did stay with them for a little bit just to help them out, but I really immersed myself in this program. And when I first started, it was a nervous wreck because here I am coming into this big CBC station with all these reporters who have their journalism degrees, who have their masters, and stuff like that, and I just felt like a little intimidating going in there and thinking, what do they think about me coming in as this person who has no training in journalism? So I was a little bit concerned in that aspect. But once I was in there, everybody was coming swarming, introducing themselves and saying if I had any questions or any concerns, or no question is a stupid question. So I felt very supportive like the first week I was there. And I wasn't scared to ask questions because I'm like, yeah, I have no idea what I'm doing. So obviously I will ask questions, and they're probably gonna be really silly questions. So what really was great about the program too is that the training, like we were trained with people like professionals, people who actually worked at CBC, and they showed us how to do Palopoly, which is like how to do web stories. And then for radio, we're shown how to write scripts for radio, how to write the clips, cut the clips. And I think the first week I thought, I was like, yeah, I know how to cut clips. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I've done editing. I'm going to do this. And I cut clips like you cut in film. So I was cutting things, putting them together. They're like, no, you can't do that. This is this is a media. We can't do, distort things. And I was like, oh, okay. But it was a learning moment for me. So in that aspect, that was like, of course you're going to get put into the boring stuff of training, learning, and then. But it's good. It's not short-term stuff that you're learning, it's long-term stuff. So with that, and I felt supportive. There's other Indigenous people in my station, which was Brian Ennius, Jennifer Francis, Richard Adjikude, who were very helpful right away. They came to me, like, you ever have any questions or if you're concerns, don't be afraid to come to us. And Richard was also a good mentor for me. He would always come to me, he'd give me things, here, go read this in the mirror, or go practice this, or here's some suggestions for this and that. So thanks to him, I know how to do good photos now for web stories. And then with that training, you take that and then you're just immersed into one of the areas. Like if you wanted to go into TV, you go into TV and you work in that area for a week. So I think we did that for 4 to 6 weeks. We worked a week in each area, and then once we were done that time, we got to choose the area that we kind of like wanted to learn more about, or just were taking a liking to, which I chose to do current affairs in TV. So I got immersed in that for a while, for a bit longer, and I realized like I like writing web stories. I like doing TV because it was a lot like filmmaking, right? You're going out there, you're interviewing people, you're getting the story, but also if you have the time, which a lot of times you don't in the newsroom, to research the story before you go into it. And that way you know the questions, you kind of know a little bit about what you're talking about. You're not just going in there and asking these questions and not knowing anything about the person, especially if you go into like Indigenous communities. You're not just walking in there not knowing nothing about them and getting the story and then jetting out of there. That was kind of one of the skills that I learned from documentary filmmaking for myself, was how you would kind of get your participant or the person who's the subject in your documentary. Is you sit there and you just kind of talk with them, you joke with them, especially Indigenous people, right? People like to laugh, they want to get to know you a little bit, they loosen up, they trust you, and that way when you go in there and you ask your questions, they're most likely to tell you things you may not know before, or they may not have shared before because they trust you now, and you're not in there just to come and take their story and leave, and you actually sat with them and respected their space and their time. So that's kind of like one of the skills I think I brought into this program. What was that? And so with that, I think so far I've been having, and I was one of the lucky ones to get a permanent position with CBC, so I am now a CBC reporter focusing on Indigenous storytelling. And that was one of the worries too at the beginning of the program and towards the end, is like, what's going to happen? Are you going to get hired? But that's one of the things is it's not a guarantee, right? But if you do a really good job and there's a position after, you can apply. And if you're lucky enough, or you put your skills to the best use that you can, you'll eventually get a position like me and Janell both have. And I feel like before it was like, unsure of where you stood in your station, but I felt with the support from everyone, I feel respected when I come with my stories. I know my stories weren't pitched the greatest at the beginning, so I know why I was denied them. But now I feel like I can pitch better, and I'm coming with my own pitches and stories, and they're not having to give me stories like at the beginning. Like as I was telling Mervin the other day, that I was giving the cat stories, the fundraiser stories, the real, as you would say, not the most exciting stories, but yeah, those, but they were learning experience. They taught me patience. They taught me how to write a story, and I didn't realize that until Mervin kind of said that, and I was like, yeah, it was teaching me patience and teaching me how to write a story. So then when I do get the big stories, I'm not looking like an amateur, or not really knowing how to write it. I know how to put it together in a way that I want. And that's kind of like what I wanted out of this program. And as a documentary filmmaker and now as a reporter, I really consider myself an Indigenous storyteller rather than a reporter. And that's kind of like what I liked, was the title of this program was Storyteller, because that's basically what reporting is too. You're telling stories in whatever way it may be. If it's a cat stuck in a tree, a fire happening, car accident, or one of the stories was an Indigenous community had a tragedy happen in their community. Instead of they wanted to help youth instead, so they bought all these youth brand new hockey equipment just to inspire them and to keep some positivity in their life. So it's things like that where I feel like a storyteller with CBC, and that's why they really think the importance of programs like this. It gives opportunity in the long-term training rather than short-term. So you kind of, even if you're not hired, you can take those skills after, and you can maybe create your own stories and some other aspects of a media, or I don't know, if CBC doesn't want you, you can go get hired somewhere else. But you have those skills now to continue the storytelling and Indigenous storytelling specifically, which is why I initially got into filmmaking, was because I wanted to tell Indigenous stories from an Indigenous person who grew up and was raised on the reserve since my whole life. And the reason I left the reserve was so that I can attend university. And I'm always a proud person to say that I grew up in my community, and I was really excited to be a part of this program, and I feel supported by everyone there, especially when I see, and was excited that there's so many CBC Indigenous reporters. I'm like, wow, this is like pretty exciting, and it makes me kind of proud, because I'm like, I want to see more. I'm like everybody else. I want to see more Indigenous reporters out there. And so I'm really thankful and grateful for this opportunity, and I really hope this continues, not after this year, but continues on. And I know people say expand it, make it big, but I think when you have the numbers like 7, 8, it's a good number, because then you're close, and no one's going to feel left out in training or whatever it is. Like when you're in school, right, there's like 20, 30 of you. You don't get that one-on-one with someone because there's so much of you. There's like a good number, then you get that good one-on-one. So that's all I have to say for that. And I thank CBC for supporting that and wanting to get more Indigenous reporters and journalists out there.
Thanks so much, Louise and Janell. We have 5 minutes for questions if anyone has anything they want to ask us.
Kris, before we ask questions, I just want to let people know, one of the barriers we identified when we created this program was the hiring process at CBC. For anybody who's never worked at CBC or have applied for a job at CBC, it is really, really difficult. So part of it that built into this program is that they get training or understanding of how to apply for a job at CBC so you're successful, eh? And that's important here.
Okay, sorry.
This is a 9 months?
Yeah.
13-week plus? Who came up with it, and how long did it take you to come up with some sort of, you gotta have some sort of a curriculum
Mm-hmm.
In a working newsroom, you don't babies.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I was hired to work on that. We had in CBC Manitoba, which you'll see this weekend. There was a program called Manitoba Pathways, which was a 5-month program for Black, Indigenous, people of color, aspiring journalists, also maybe from non-traditional backgrounds. But it was based all in the one shop and had a bit of a smaller cohort and smaller timeline. So we knew the curriculum that they had used. And we had a program developer and someone from our learning and development kind of team kind of looking at that. But I was kind of hired to kind of flesh out the program and timelines and everything. And I just got hired in mid-July of last year. So mid-July. So within 2 months, as a new person to the CBC, I basically just, I talk to people. What do these folks need to learn off the hop? What also needs to be done locally, right? Because there's certain technical processes and terminology that is best learned hands-on with the local team, because there's some variability between stations and bureaus in terms of even what platforms they offer, right? We had one candidate who is in a digital-only shop, so they don't have a TV station, they don't have radio. So, it came together very quickly, and I mean, it wasn't perfect, but again, we had that focus. The CBC's values are like creativity, inclusiveness, relevance, and then the craft part, right? So I kind of took that lens on it, and we put a lot of focus at the beginning on empowering participants to know who to talk to if they have a question, to be able to be confident in asking those questions, to be able to complain if they're concerned about something, right? So that we would have this continual flow of feedback, and also know that there's going to be safety and support to challenge that. I mean, we've made improvements to the curriculum this year, even just, for example, having dedicated days in the station and for potentially remote work online and with the virtual cohort. But, there's some structured things we know every journalist is going to know. The initial weeks really are also, they're not doing hands-on multi-platform rotations in different media yet. So it is really about some of the principles and practices around the journalism standards and practices of CBC, critical thinking skills like interview skills, writing, presentation skills, those kinds of things, but also a lot around values, navigating the public broadcaster, team building, empowerment, and that kind of thing as well.
So something to add to this also, and it's really important here, is that it's Indigenous journalists that developed this, that were part of the committee and were advised and brought in. And it's from our experiences working at the CBC, entering the CBC, and surviving and being successful at the CBC. That's how this worked, and that's how it got started. And we used our own experiences to build into it. And we knew where the traps were. We knew where the surprises were. So we were able to avoid them and work through them.
Yep.
Mine's coming back.
Oh.
No, you go ahead. Mine's like a really quick leading question. You've addressed it already. I apologize. But is this specifically open just to Americans?
It's for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, which are the Indigenous peoples living in Canada, and you have to be legally eligible to work in Canada to apply. So, yeah.
I was thinking about that the question. I just have one more comment about what makes this program really special, because it's not just about participants, but we're also looking at the environments they're going into, and it's a learning process for those environments as well, creating that level of cultural safety and support. So it's not, and Kris has done an incredible job. I love the steering committee as well, where it's not just anybody gets a participant, it's those that are ready to support and go on this journey with them. So this is like one of the other things I think we should be proud
I just add to that? I just wanted to say, yes, I think having your station support was kind of like one of my parts of my success, because I felt like I wasn't treated as I was just a person part of this program that was going to be there for 9 months. I felt like I was treated as an actual reporter and journalist there, and I was treated like everyone else. You know, here everyone was, but besides everyone being super busy, everyone made the time to help me out, support me, answer my questions, invited me to reporter things, and that was really great, I think, in that aspect. So I think, yeah, the stations have to be 100% behind the Pathways program and knowing how to support it.
Yeah, that's a key point. We didn't just sprinkle candidates wherever. Host stations, there's like 45 different CBC stations and bureaus. Host stations kind of, in the first year, they applied for interest, and there was 15, and we kind of assigned people among those. And this year, we took it to another level, and we only assigned as many host locations as we had placements, right? And then the hosts had to fill out a commitment form, signing on to how they would support the candidates. So we are over time, but if people have a couple more minutes, we did have two more questions.
We also made sure that the senior managing directors, the other ones like me across the country, supported this, because we need the support from the top down for it to be successful. And they have to be committed. And I put it on them. I said, you guys got to be committed, and they got to have a job waiting for them when it is over.
Just quickly, there's a great point about the world outside the CBC, right? I mean, there's a lot of media in Canada and the United States, obviously. I think, Janell, you referenced Jakarta and Six Nations Immigrant as one of the stations that's developing the Indigenous journalism. Is there a conversation going on about taking this outside the doors of the CBC to like network of community, commercial interest, radio stations that exist across the country, and where there's a huge demand and need for quality journalism as well?
That's part of why we're here, is to let people outside of CBC know the program exists and how they can, lessons that can be shared. My background is in community radio. I think that's one of the reasons I got selected for this role, is because I had this long background of taking people into community stations who have no background in media production and kind of developing those skills so that they feel confident going on air. So yeah, definitely open to sharing ideas. I mean, obviously the reason that there's resources to put into this is because the CBC has specific needs and obligations, right, that it needs to fulfill for Indigenous recruitment and retention. At the end of the day, that's kind of the bottom line supporting that investment. So I don't know if the CBC would be able, especially now we have one major political party in Canada kind of wielding an axe over the CBC's head. So I don't know if there would be resources to support those kinds of development placements in other community stations, but definitely sharing lessons learned and resources. And actually, Mervin, up in the north in Yellowknife, there's a staff person called Jenna Dulowich, and she's organized these community workshops for high school students and youth that are open to people from the community. We have similar kind of community programs in Thunder Bay and in Winnipeg, where CBC staff are going into local high schools and kind of training them on podcasting or video creation and that kind of thing, and then sharing their stories with audiences. So there's lots of ways for the CBC to kind of connect with Indigenous community stations and other media that way. And sorry, one last question in the back, and then we'll try and wrap up because you kind of. Oh.
I was wondering how, like you guys were saying that you can't put people in bad places where they don't have the support. And I was wondering, how did you vet the other stations to make sure that you're putting them in places that be supportive?
Okay.
Well, like I said, we need leadership from the top to be supportive. And then we also look and see, well, how many Indigenous staff does that newsroom have already? And so we look at it that way, and try to build a good, safe place and a supportive place. And, the executive producers also play a big role in these shops. And if they're supportive, then they'll get the resources and the support that they need. So that's how we do that.
I just have one more question. Did all of the
We had one individual, we had so we initially were recruiting for 6, then we got a little flexibility, we brought 7 on. One of the 7, like in the second or third week of the program, got a permanent job with their local library that like was a permanent job that had a better wage or whatever, and so that person left the program like in the first couple of weeks. The other 6 candidates did complete the program in June, and all of them transitioned into longer term work, either the permanent roles or other contracts. So, Duncan.
You talked about the need to create social supports and financial supports for the fellows. And my question is for Mervin more than anything else. What was that conversation like at the CBC to tell them that you were going to need to offer those to these incoming people and that you needed someone, a position, I suppose? Or did it all fall on Kris? Did Kris have to do all that work?
No, we had those discussions at my level and at the steering committee level, like asked about the selection of sites where it would be. That was one of the things, is what are the chances of having a position available when this program is concluded in the 9 months? That, you know, and if you, yeah, we're gonna have an opening or we have a couple of openings, there's a possibility there. So then we went like that, and because the CBC is a unionized environment, it's a challenge, eh? You know, and an example that I used when I was talking with the steering committee was the lady that Kris mentioned, Jenna. Jenna applied for a job in the north probably about 5 times, and she didn't make it. Finally, I picked up the phone and I called Jenna. I said, Jenna, you know, you're competing, but you're so close, but you're not quite winning that job, you know, competition. I said, why don't you come up north? We'll put you to work as a temporary casual for 5 months, and then we'll extend it after 5 months if you still don't have a permanent job. And I said, why we're doing this is because you need to know how to compete for a job at the CBC. And of course, the North, we have you know, high turnover, so we always have jobs, eh? You know, it seems like. Anyways, Jenna was there for less than a year. She applied for a current affairs reporting job, and she got that. And that's what I tell the other people is we have to make that commitment. We have to bring them in. We got to give them that opportunities, but we got to have a job for them. And this program's longevity depends on how many people we can get permanent jobs for, right? If they're not getting jobs, then we're like, well, what's the point? So we got to find them jobs. So that's why there's a commitment needed by senior managing directors and managing editors and exec producers, you know, to make sure that they do their best to try to have, you know, a successful landing for the, you know, for the participants.
Yeah.
As Native journalists or consumers of Native content, how accessible are these stories to, if we're in the U.S., are they just accessible via Canada, and then distribution, like how can we view some of these stories or listen to some of these stories?
Like most of it's available just online. I believe if you go to cbc.ca, you can see the web stories. You can stream video and audio segments. You know, you might not be able to tune into the over-the-air signal, obviously, being in the States, but there's so much content just online that you just can't look at it through Facebook anymore. Apparently, maybe might be an issue. But yeah, thanks for asking, and thanks everyone for coming.
There's YouTube too.
Yeah, YouTube.
Our stories are on there.
Although sometimes there's restrictions on viewing YouTube in other countries, I know that.
Download our app.
Right now.
We have some Indigenous Pathways lanyards to give away if you are interested in some swag. We also have some little cards here with a link to the website if you want more information, and we'll be around for a few minutes if you have questions you didn't get to ask.
One more announcement. CBC people, stick around here. We got to take a group photo. Susan asked me to get a photo of everybody. So.
Merci, miigwech. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thank you.